Hello, a very good evening. It's 9:06 on LBC. Now, if you're a regular listener to this programme, you'll know that I like to cover quite a lot about Northern Ireland and indeed the island of Ireland. Irish politics has always fascinated me, and I don't think that enough of the British mainland media covers Northern Ireland, and things happen there that just seem to go by the by and nobody comments. And so I've done quite a lot of phone-ins on Northern Irish politics over the last few years, and we always get a fantastic response, not just from Northern Ireland but Southern Ireland as well. It really, I don't know why, but I when I see a caller from Northern Ireland on the switchboard, because LBC has only been available in Northern Ireland for a comparatively short time, and I know that we've got a really growing listenership there, and I can see already the calls are coming in. And the reason is we have the leader of the DUP with us tonight. It's Sir Jeffrey Donaldson. He's MP for a constituency which I always have difficulty pronouncing, so he's going to pronounce it.
Good evening, Ian. It's Lagan Valley. So the Lagan is the river that flows through Belfast in my constituency. It's just to the west of Belfast and includes the city of Lisburn, beautiful village, Georgian village of Hillsborough, and other villages like Moira, Magabry, and then Dromore is a cathedral town. So I'm very fortunate to represent such a beautiful constituency.
And part of the reason we've got you on tonight is because you are the relatively new leader of the DUP. And you inherited the leadership at a very difficult time for the party. I think you would agree with that. And you look at the opinion polls now, and that's kind of reflected in them. The latest one for the Belfast Telegraph has you on 13%, the TUV 14%, UUP 16%, Sinn Féin on 25%, and the SDLP on 13%, and the Alliance on 13%. Do you kind of feel, well, OK, the only way is up? It can't get a lot worse than this in terms of polling?
Well, look, I've never been the kind of politician who is obsessed with opinion polls, and I'm not convinced that what is reflected in this poll is actually where we are. But there is no doubt at the moment we are behind. Sinn Féin are out in front by a significant margin. And if that were to be replicated in an Assembly election, and the next Assembly election is due in May next year, then clearly that would have major consequences for politics in Northern Ireland.
But the elections could come earlier than that, couldn't they? I mean, you have made some comments recently which have led people to think that you might withdraw from the Stormont Parliament.
Well, one of the big issues for us at the moment, Ian, notwithstanding that Northern Ireland faces similar challenges to what is faced in other parts of the UK and indeed on the island of Ireland. So COVID, of course, economic recovery, our health services is under enormous pressure, our education system. But since the beginning of this year, we have a new problem, a real difficulty that is adding a significant layer of political instability. It's harming our economy. And that, of course, is the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is part of the new arrangements for conducting trade between the United Kingdom and the European Union. And the protocol separates Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, despite the fact that the UK is our biggest market. We sell far more goods into Great Britain, and we purchase far more goods from Great Britain.
But that first bit isn't being affected, though, is it?
Largely.
Exports to Britain from Northern Ireland are the same as they were before.
Well, not quite. But at least they are better than is the case for goods coming from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. And we are facing real difficulties at the moment. I met last week with the largest group of independent retailers in Northern Ireland. They are supplied, if you'll forgive me for name dropping, they're supplied by Nisa and Co-op. And they were informed last week that the access they have to product lines is being slashed from 9,000 product lines to 4,500. So 50% cut in the product lines that they can access from their biggest supplier in Great Britain. And that has a real impact on those independent retailers who are already struggling to survive in very difficult and challenging circumstances in towns and villages across Northern Ireland where they don't have some of the big retailers. So this is having a real, creating real problems for not only our retail sector, but our manufacturing sector as well, because they are both now aligned to the EU single market, which means that we have effectively a customs border in the Irish Sea.
The DUP supported Brexit. You supported Brexit, I think. Shouldn't you have foreseen some of these things?
Well, no, because the United Kingdom as a whole voted for Brexit on the basis that we were all parts of the United Kingdom were leaving together and on the same terms. No one suggested at that time that Northern Ireland would be treated differently. And we recognise, of course, that we're the only part of the UK that has a land border with an EU member state. And we were clear that we wanted to see sensible arrangements put in place that would avoid a hard border on the island and avoid a border in the Irish Sea. We believe that it is perfectly possible in the 21st century, with the wonderful technology that we have these days, to design systems whereby you can differentiate between goods that are travelling from Great Britain to Northern Ireland and remaining within the UK internal market, and those goods that are travelling on into the EU. But the EU said no. And I think the reason they said no is because they wanted to use Northern Ireland, in the words of senior EU officials, to punish the UK. One senior EU official said, well, Northern Ireland will be the price the UK pays for Brexit. So the EU pushed hard, supported by the Irish government and others, and the result was this Irish Sea border, which I believe is unnecessary, unacceptable. And the EU says that it is in place, this protocol is in place to protect the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement, to protect the peace process, but it's actually, Iain, having the opposite effect. It is creating a political instability. Article 1 of the Good Friday Belfast Agreement states that there will be no change to the constitutional status of Northern Ireland without the consent of its people. And yet the High Court in Belfast ruled recently that the protocol changes Article 6 of the Act of Union. The very basis upon which Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom has now been altered by this protocol without the consent of the people of Northern Ireland. So as a unionist, I don't think that's right. I think that contravenes the very agreement that the EU say they want to protect. And it now has the potential, Iain, if we're not careful. If we can't find a solution to this problem, it has the potential actually to so destabilise the political institutions and the relationships they represent that it could be very harmful to Northern Ireland.
I saw television pictures of you meeting the Irish Taoiseach recently. Now, it seems to me that he, rather than Simon Coveney, the Foreign Minister, who seems to have a few problems today, I think he's got a vote of confidence or something in him, but Micheál Martin seems to me to be the key to this, and he seems to be much more understanding of the position of Northern Ireland than possibly his predecessor Leo Varadkar was, and also that the European Commission might be. Did you find that in your talks with him at all?
I did, to be honest. I found Micheál Martin very receptive and sharing our concern that if we don't find a solution to this problem, then it has the capacity to derail the political institutions. And I think that the Taoiseach recognises that more so than some of his ministerial colleagues. And the proof of that, the evidence of that, came last Thursday when Maros Sefcovic, the chief EU negotiator, vice president of the EU, visited Belfast. And when he met the five party leaders in Belfast, myself included, he said that the EU now for the first time was saying we recognise there are problems that we need to find solutions to, and I have no doubt that is at least in part due to the fact that I think the Irish Prime Minister is now very much aware of the difficulties, and I hope that he can help. But look, in the end, Iain, the people who need to move, the people who've said they will move, in their command paper earlier this year in July, the government, through Lord Frost, who I think is doing a good job, who recognises the problem, who has said this protocol is not sustainable because it's causing harm economically to Northern Ireland, it is creating political instability, and in their command paper, the UK government outlined the steps they would take. Now, I recognise they want to try and find an accommodation with the EU. The EU need to step up here. Time is of the essence. We can't let this drag on indefinitely, and that is why last week I made clear that in the absence of the EU accommodating the needs of the UK and removing these unnecessary checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, restoring Northern Ireland's place within the UK internal market, then I expect that the government will take the action they have stated they will take in the command paper.
And if they don't?
Well, then that has, as I said, back on the 1st of July, the morning after I was elected leader of the DUP, I said, look, if we can't find a solution, if we can't remove this unnecessary Irish Sea border, that will have consequences for political stability. It will have consequences for the viability of the political institutions.
You could withdraw the DUP from the Assembly?
Well, from the executive, which are ministers. And I do not think it is a tenable position. And let me explain this to your listeners, because I think this is important. For 3 years in Northern Ireland, we had no government because Sinn Féin pulled out of the executive. In the negotiations that led to the restoration of our devolved government...
That's what you're threatening to do now.
Last year, well, I'm coming to that. Last year, we reached a new agreement called the New Decade, New Approach Agreement. And it was on the basis of that agreement that we all, the political parties in Northern Ireland, agreed to go back into government. Now, one of the key elements of that agreement was a commitment made by the UK government to protect our place within the UK internal market. And of course, that means dealing with the protocol, because the protocol has harmed our place in the UK internal market. Now, in October, next month, the UK government has given a commitment that they're going to introduce legislation linked to the New Decade, New Approach Agreement on culture, which will include proposals on the Irish language. Now, they did that because 3 months ago, Sinn Féin threatened to pull their ministers out of Stormont unless the government legislated on this culture package, including the Irish language. The UK government said, yes, we will do that. And despite the fact that it's actually a devolved responsibility, that it's for Stormont to take these decisions and make these laws. Now, can you imagine my position come October, come next month, when we have the government saying we're going to legislate for one element of the New Decade, New Approach Agreement, but we're going to ignore the problems of the protocol. We're not going to do what we said in New Decade, New Approach we would do, which is to protect Northern Ireland's place in the UK internal market. That is not a sustainable position.
Just to explain, we have to go to break in a second, but just to explain where, I mean, look, I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on Northern Ireland politics, but to me, it seems inconceivable that anyone can get so exercised about a language provision. Why is it so important to both sides?
Well, look, clearly it is. It's important. The Nationalist Party, Sinn Féin included, have said that they want to have this legislation. And in fact, Sinn Féin were prepared to pull out of government on the basis of this. Now, I'm not saying that. But what is, I think, far more important is a protocol that is harming our economy on a daily basis. It is estimated that the impact cost of that protocol will run to hundreds of millions of pounds a year in harm to our economy. But crucially, Iain, it is undermining confidence in the political institutions. We only have a peace agreement in Northern Ireland because both Unionists and Nationalists sign up to it. We only have a functioning government in Northern Ireland because both Unionists and Nationalists are part of it. There isn't a single Unionist elected representative in Northern Ireland that supports the protocol, not one. And in those circumstances, Iain, given that Unionists do not consent to, do not support this protocol, then you can understand why it is not a sustainable position for me as a unionist to be required to implement something I can't support.
And the Nationalists don't either, really, do they?
Well, and that's why I think we need to find a solution.
That's a good thing from your point of view. You can actually have a united approach.
And that is my view, that I want to get a solution here that we can all live with. But it fundamentally has to mean that we remove these barriers to trade between Northern Ireland and our biggest market, by far our biggest market.
Lots more to talk about. We're going to come to your calls after 9:30, 0345 6060 973, if you'd like to put a call through to the leader of the DUP, Sir Jeffrey Donaldson. It's 9:20 on LBC.
This is LBC. Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
23 minutes past 9. We have Sir Jeffrey Donaldson with us. We're going to come to your calls to him in a moment. But a couple more questions from me. Is it a disadvantage to you that you're not First Minister? Because you're an MP at the moment. You have been an MLA in the past, haven't you? But you're not at the moment. How does that work?
Yeah, well, I'm not the only Northern Ireland Party leader who is a Member of Parliament. Colm Eastwood is the leader of the SDLP and is an MP. Actually, at the moment, Iain, it works quite well because some of the big issues we're having to deal with are actually Westminster based. So the protocol, most obviously, but also legacy. We're at the moment trying to find a way forward on how we deal with the legacy of our troubled past in Northern Ireland. So these are issues we're grappling with here. I've got Paul Given, one of my colleagues, who is the First Minister, and he's looking after the day-to-day matters in the executive. But in truth, my desire is to return to the Assembly. I believe that ultimately the big decisions to build the kind of Northern Ireland we want. I'm really passionate about the place I come from, Iain. I see so much potential in Northern Ireland, and we've been held back for many years. And I hope if we can get over the hump of this current difficulty, that that we can really drive Northern Ireland forward in our economy, socially, culturally. I think there's so much we can do to make Northern Ireland a better place for everyone, and the place to do that, obviously, is Stormont.
You started your political career in the Ulster Unionist Party. After the Good Friday Agreement, you switched to the DUP. Is one of your aims as leader to reunite the unionist movement? Because you look at the electoral arithmetic, and there is a real possibility, almost whatever happens now, that there could be a Sinn Féin First Minister after the next election. And one way around that would be for unionists to unite. Is there any possibility of that happening?
I think there is, and it may take a while. But, as I go out and about across Northern Ireland, there is no doubt amongst unionists there is a great desire to see greater unity, greater cohesion within and across the unionist movement. And I think one of the starting points for that will be the forthcoming Assembly election, where, if we cooperate, I think we can get more unionists returned to the Assembly. I think that unionism is underrepresented.
Because they've got a new leader as well, the UUP, haven't they?
They have. Doug Beattie is the new leader of the UUP. We get on very well. Doug is someone I respect, and I think that is a mutual, and I believe we can work together. Notwithstanding there are differences, and I respect those differences, but I think there's far more that unites us than divides us.
What are the main differences?
Well, it's more nuanced, I think, rather than principled difference. It's, for example, on the protocol, the UUP, we're both strongly opposed to the protocol, but we may differ from time to time tactically on how we go about opposing it.
Have they become a slightly more socially liberal party? Because the DUP, we'll remember Ian Paisley, it's been a very socially conservative party over the years. And again, looking in from outside, it seems to me that the party itself is slightly more, well, quite a bit more socially conservative than maybe the party's supporters, and that's a weakness in a way. Do you think, on same-sex marriage, for instance, I know you have voted against that in the past. A lot of Conservative MPs who voted against it in the past will say to me now, I wish I hadn't done that. I would never vote to reverse the legislation now. What's your position now on that issue?
Well, look, I don't think it's true to say that in the UUP and the DUP everybody thinks the same way.
No, you wouldn't expect them to.
No, indeed. And I think in the UUP you have many people who are socially conservative. But yes, we now have same-sex marriage in Northern Ireland. That was actually introduced via Westminster, not by the Assembly. The DUP has its view on that, but we recognise that society is changing as well, and we need to understand that. But I want to build a society where there is respect for difference, where people respect those who have an opinion that is particularly a faith-based opinion, but equally, that there is respect for those who don't hold those views.
But if there was a vote tomorrow, how would you vote?
The position of the DUP remains that we believe in traditional marriage, and that we have civil partnerships, but we now have same-sex marriage in Northern Ireland. It's there, and I don't see a vote in the Assembly on that issue coming forward, and I don't think realistically there is likely to be legislation introduced, because it is evident that a strong majority in the Assembly would not change the current law, notwithstanding that my party has a very clear view on this. But we understand that there are others in society who have a different view, and what I want to build in Northern Ireland is a society that is based on respect for the different views that people have on these matters.
Again, to many people, I think, on the British mainland, they look at Sinn Féin and think, well, maybe Sinn Féin is not the party that of the 1980s, 1990s, and that they have changed. You look at the relationship that Arlene Foster built with Michelle O'Neill. It seemed to be a very good working. I mean, maybe they weren't bosom buddies. I don't know, but they seemed to get on. And I remember that just the symbolism of them sitting on that sofa at the beginning of COVID and making a joint television statement. And you thought, well, that surely has to be progress. How do you get on with Michelle O'Neill?
Well, clearly, as Michelle is in the Assembly and I'm at Westminster at the moment, we haven't had much opportunity to work together. But look, I'm very clear on this, Iain, that I will work with others who have a democratic mandate, because in the end it is in the interests of the people of Northern Ireland that we have a government that delivers for everyone. But it's more than that, Iain. It is more than that. I lost family. I lost comrades with whom I'd served in the army.
Two cousins, I think.
During the Troubles. And there are many families across Northern Ireland on all sides of the community who carry that loss. For many of them, it's still very real. It's very raw, the pain, the hurt. And as you know, we're trying to deal with that at the moment in relation to the legacy of the Troubles. But I want to get to a place, Iain, where we can. Where we look forward more than we look back, where we're thinking about the next generation. When people ask me, look, how can you, as a unionist whose family and community suffered during the Troubles, how can you be in a government that includes people who perhaps were responsible for some of those atrocities? Well, first of all, they've got a mandate. I can't change that. I can't dictate to people who they vote for. I might wish it were different, but that is the reality. But look, if we're to move Northern Ireland forward, then I often say that, well, I'm actually thinking of my children and my future grandchildren, and what's best for them. Do I allow my feelings about the Northern Ireland that I grew up in, a very troubled, divided Northern Ireland, to dictate what happens for the next generation? Or do I try and rise above that and look to what is best for them? I don't want them to grow up in or to work and make their families in a Northern Ireland that is riven by division and where there is violence. I don't want that to be. I want Northern Ireland to be a bright, prosperous, dynamic place where people enjoy living together, and those barriers that have been the mark of our society are broken down.
Just finally on this, I imagine in the 80s and 90s there were conversations between unionist parties and Sinn Féin behind the scenes. You could not have been seen in social company with a Sinn Féin politician then, could you? Has that changed? I mean, could you imagine sort of having a drink with Michelle O'Neill?
That has never occurred because we live.
I can imagine Arlene and her sharing quite a good drink.
Well, and I haven't been there if that has happened, but look, I think there are still difficulties, and I have to be honest about that, Iain. And yet I think that we've moved a long way as a society. I see people working together, playing together, being educated together, and in ways that wouldn't have happened 20, 30 years ago. So I think we're moving on as a society gradually, and we're not there yet. There are still places in Belfast and elsewhere, where the symbols of division are still very evident in Northern Ireland. So look, yes, I'm sure there are people who socialise. I tend, when I have spare time, I tend to try and spend that time, with family and friends, and not really with other politicians. I tend to get enough of politics every week that when I get spare time, I love to go walk in the hills with family and friends and do things like that, Iain. But yes, I think that society is changing for the better.
Well, there are so many more things I could ask you about, but I'm going to hand it over to the callers in a moment. 0345 6060 973 if you'd like to talk to the DUP leader, Sir Jeffrey Donaldson. First, though, the news headlines at 9:33 with Simon English.
The Prime Minister says he hopes increasing COVID vaccine uptake will be enough to avoid harsh restrictions in England over the winter. Booster jabs are being rolled out to the over 50s and frontline health and care workers from next week. But Plan B could see a return of social distancing, working from home and face coverings in public places. Meanwhile, secondary school pupils in England are being told they'll need to keep wearing masks in classrooms for another few weeks. The First Minister has extended their requirement to the October break. Northern Ireland's Environment Minister says the EU is damaging the peace process in the region through its actions following Brexit. Edwin Poots has criticised terms agreed between the EU and UK, which see additional checks on goods arriving in Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. LBC weather, a mostly dry night, lows of 11, staying cloudy and dry tomorrow morning, with afternoon highs of 21 degrees.
This is LBC. This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:37 on LBC. Just before we go to questions, just a quick comment on this no confidence vote that Simon Coveney, the Irish Foreign Minister, is facing. He seems to be in a bit of political trouble. Any views on it?
Yes, there's been a bit of a dispute going on in Dublin for the last few weeks around the appointment of a former Fine Gael minister as in some kind of ambassadorial role, not in the diplomatic service, but I think in one of the international organisations. And that caused a bit of controversy. And ever since then, journalists have been working away on trying to get to the bottom of all of this. And it seems that some of the fingers, at least, are pointing towards Simon Coveney in what happened, and I suspect he'll survive the no confidence vote, because the coalition government there of Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Green Party, I don't think really want at this stage to take a major hit like this.
Would you welcome it if he did survive? Or?
Well, look, I've known Simon for some time. At times, I think he hasn't been taken the wisest approach, particularly in his engagement with unionism. I do think that the current Taoiseach has a more nuanced approach, a better understanding of unionism. But we work with who we work with, and in the end, we want to have a good relationship with the Irish government in terms of the cooperation that can take place on the island.
Right, let's move to your calls. John is in Armagh. Hello, John.
Hi, good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. What would you like to ask?
I'm just trying to get my head around this. Northern Ireland voted against Brexit. Now, the unionists say we're part of the United Kingdom. So therefore, the United Kingdom as a whole, which you're saying we are, voted for Brexit, therefore voted for the protocol. So aren't you swimming a bit upstream? You're pushing against the whole of the United Kingdom, because the whole of the United Kingdom voted in the way, because they voted for Brexit, they voted for the protocol.
Well, John, I voted for Brexit, and there was certainly no mention of the protocol on the ballot paper that I saw during the referendum. It simply asked the question, do you want to leave the EU or do you want to remain in the EU?
But you must have been aware that the border would become an issue in those circumstances.
Certainly not in a way that was going to create a border within the United Kingdom. I mean, look, show me any comparable country anywhere in the world that has a customs border right down the middle of that nation. So the United Kingdom is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That's the official title of our country, and yet we have a customs border separating one part of the United Kingdom from the other. The idea that we should have foreseen this simply doesn't stack up. There is no model, example of this anywhere else in the world that I see that people could have said, oh, well, that's what the result will be. And in fact, I don't think, Iain, that needs to be the outcome. I really don't, because I think it is perfectly possible. And I know that there are companies out there, I've seen it demonstrated with the systems that can differentiate between goods travelling between Great Britain and Northern Ireland and goods travelling into the European Union. We do not need to have checks on goods travelling within the United Kingdom internal market, nor should a UK government be accepting that is the case.
But that's not my question. Sorry.
Go on, John.
That's not my question. My question is, the whole of the United Kingdom voted for Brexit, irrespective of what you didn't or did not know. You voted for Brexit, as did the whole of the United Kingdom, which you purport to be wanting to be part of. So therefore, you have to agree to whatever the UK government, as a whole of the UK, is delivering.
I say, John, so if the UK government passes a law that you don't agree with, then are you saying we should always accept every law that the UK government passes, whether it's Labour or Conservative, and we should never try to change the law? I'm sorry, John, that's not the basis of democracy. My job as an... John, my job that we did, and I took part in that vote, but my job as an opposition MP is, guess what? To oppose the government. When I think that legislation is bad, where it's wrong, I will oppose the government. I did it this evening on the Health and Social Care Bill. I opposed the government because I don't believe the government has got that right. So I'm sorry, John, but the idea that the people of the United Kingdom have to accept legislation or arrangements simply because the government enacts that legislation is not what democracy is about. Democracy is about our ability to change things when we don't think they are working and when we don't think they are right. And that's all that I am trying to do. And by the way, John, when you say that I purport to belong to the United Kingdom, I don't. I was born in the United Kingdom. I carry a British passport. My family have been in Northern Ireland for over 400 years. And in all of that time, we've been part of the United Kingdom. John, I don't purport to be in the United Kingdom. I am a citizen of the United Kingdom.
Exactly.
I was born in the United Kingdom,
exactly
and I am
my
entitled.
Point.
Well,
That's
then,
exactly my point.
So why are you saying?
The United Kingdom voted for Brexit, irrespective of what comes down the road.
No, sorry, John. They voted for Brexit, but then there was a negotiation around what the future arrangements and relationship should be with the European Union. And I am entitled, as many others are, to say that we do not support the current arrangements. And the reason I don't support them, John, is because the protocol drives a customs border down the middle of the United Kingdom. It undermines my rights as a British citizen. And I am entitled, John, within our democracy, to oppose that. And that is exactly what I am doing.
John, thank you very much. Let's go to Munesh in Southall. Hello, Munesh. Oh, and he's gone. That's really helpful. No, he's back. Munesh, what would you like to ask?
I'd like to say to you, what's going on here? You're supposed to be protecting your borders. You've let Boris walk all over you. He promised you something, and what do? You let it go.
Munesh, yeah, okay. Well, a little bit of rewriting of history, Munesh, so let me just put the record straight. When Boris Johnson, as Prime Minister, brought forward the proposals for the protocol in the autumn of 2019, my party voted against those proposals. And in fact, it was our votes in the House of Commons that were the difference between Boris Johnson getting his protocol and EU withdrawal agreement through and not. And you will recall that actually Parliament blocked the EU withdrawal agreement at that time. And as a result, the Prime Minister then had to go to the country. He called an election in the autumn of 2019. And the reason he called an election was because it was DUP votes in the House of Commons that were the difference between him winning and losing. So he had to go to the country, and he won an overall majority. Now, I have 8 seats in the House of Commons. Boris Johnson has an overall majority of 80. And I think you will recognise in those circumstances it's very difficult for a party with 8 votes to overturn an overall majority of 80 votes. So it's not that we allowed the Prime Minister to walk over us, it's that he got a majority in the general election and he was able to push the withdrawal agreement and the protocol through Parliament and it became law. Now, we want to see the protocol dealt with. We recognise and are highlighting the problems that it causes and is harming Northern Ireland, and that's why I want to see the government do what they said they would do in the command paper back in July and make the changes that are necessary to restore Northern Ireland's place within the UK internal market.
OK, Munesh, thank you very much. A text here doesn't have a name. Can I remind Jeffrey Donaldson that the majority of people in the north of Ireland wanted to remain in the EU, and because of the meddling of the DUP and their friends in the ERG pushing for the hardest Brexit possible, we find ourselves in this mess. The majority of businesses in the north want the protocol to work because they can see the benefits which can be gained by making it work. But once again, the DUP blame others for this mess and telling businesses here that they know better than businesses what is good for them. The DUP have been a curse on equality on this island since their formation. Let's just pick one bit out of that. There are many businesses in Northern Ireland that rather like the protocol, aren't there?
Well, there aren't that many, Iain, I have to say. I've travelled extensively across Northern Ireland and I've met a lot of businesses who are suffering as a result of the protocol. Yes, I do accept there are some businesses who support the protocol, but I don't believe that's a majority of businesses, and I would certainly challenge that. That is not my experience. All of the groups representing businesses across Northern Ireland are saying to the government, we need to see change. The chief executives of the 4 major supermarket chains in Northern Ireland all came out recently and said the protocol is harming our businesses. I'm every day facing constituents who are having problems with ordering goods from suppliers in Great Britain that were freely available to them just a few months ago. So I don't accept this narrative by some that it's all right, that there isn't a problem. The DUP is hyping something up that doesn't exist. No credible commentator believes that is the case.
Victoria, who describes herself as a passionate unionist from England, says Jeffrey's balanced and progressive approach is exactly what Northern Ireland needs. His views are clearly traditional, but knows the country must move with the times. He's tackled your questioning well and hasn't given the normal sidestep answers most would do. If only all politicians could be like this. Well, you've got one fan out of this anyway, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria.
Well, that's his sister. No, it isn't. We'll come to more of your calls in a moment. It's 9:48.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Tom Swarbrick.
Nicki Minaj's cousin's friend's swollen testicles leads to a rebuke of the singer from Chris Whitty, who says she and others who erroneously cast out on the vaccine should be ashamed and ignored. Is ignoring right?
Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
We all
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
9:51. We're with the leader of the DUP, Sir Jeffrey Donaldson. Mark is in Sevenoaks. Mark, hi. What would you like to ask?
Hi. Is the withdrawal agreement compatible with the Good Friday Agreement?
That is a very good question, Mark. In my opinion, it isn't, for a number of reasons. First of all, the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement states in Article 1 that there will be no change to the constitutional status of Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom unless a majority of the people consent to it. Now, the High Court recently in Belfast ruled that in fact there has been a change to the constitutional status as a result of the EU withdrawal agreement and the protocol contained within it. And that change is in Article 6 of the Act of Union, the very basis of Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom. Article 6 states clearly there shall be no barriers to trade between the constituent parts of the United Kingdom. And of course, the protocol creates a border, a customs border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which means there are now barriers to trade within the United Kingdom, thus breaching the Act of Union and breaching our constitutional status. The second and key area where the agreement is breached is in relation to the political institutions. The protocol changes the nature of our relationship on an east-west basis between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the agreement states that these relationships or institutions are interlocking and interdependent. That means if you harm one, you harm all of them. And that's why I'm saying we can't allow this to continue, because the protocol is harming all of the relationships, the internal in Northern Ireland, the east-west between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, and north-south between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. All are being harmed by this protocol, and therefore they undermine the principles and the provisions of the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement.
Mark?
Right, yes. Well, in that case, the will of the people in the Good Friday Agreement referendum and the will of the people in the Brexit referendum has clashed. And so as far as I can see, the people have to make a decision. Which do they want?
But also, as a texter points out here, the DUP never signed up to the Good Friday Agreement and now do nothing but say how they want to protect it. The people over here are sick listening to this rubbish, which is always coming from the DUP. I mean, you left the UUP over that, didn't you?
Again, Iain, you see the rewriting of history. We are past masters in Northern Ireland at rewriting history. The St Andrews Agreement of 2006 changed key elements of the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement, and on that basis we signed up. So please don't rewrite history. The facts are there. The reason we have been in government, the reason why we've worked the political institutions is because the St Andrews Agreement changed the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement actually for the better, and I think everybody accepts that.
Do you think that a border poll is inevitable now sometime in the next few years?
No, I'm not convinced that it is, Iain. I think that all of the opinion polls demonstrate very clearly, and indeed the Life and Times survey, which is a survey conducted every year by Queen's University, shows strong support for the Union. In fact, support for the Union in Northern Ireland is significantly higher than, for example, support for the Union in Scotland. So I think that given that the Belfast Agreement states that there will not be a border poll unless the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland believes there's been a significant change in support for the Union, there is no evidence of that significant change.
Right. Mark, thank you very much. Let's move on to Roger in Donegal. Hello, Roger.
Hello, good evening, and good evening, Jeffrey.
Good evening, Roger.
I'd like to... Hi, how are you? I want to ask a simple question, really, and that is, to what extent does religious doctrine influence the DUP? I asked the question particularly because, as a consultant clinical psychologist for some 35 years in the North, I was in a situation where I had a member of the DUP saying that they required people who were gay to require some kind of treatment to make them straight. I found it amazing. What's your opinion, Jeffrey? Come on, let us know.
Well, first of all, we're not a church, Roger. We're a political party, although many members of the DUP have a very strong faith-based perspective on life. That is not unique to the DUP. In Parliament, I have many friends in political parties here who have a strong faith-based perspective on life, and that is not unique to Christians, by the way, Roger. There are many people of faith from the Jewish communities, from Islam and other faith groups who are involved in politics. So people with a faith perspective can and do get involved in politics. That is not unique to the DUP. It's not unique to Northern Ireland. In relation to conversion therapy, which I assume is what you're talking about, the DUP voted against conversion therapy in the Northern Ireland Assembly.
Jeffrey,
Roger?
It is absolutely ridiculous to say that the DUP are not influenced by fundamentalist religious beliefs. And okay, there may have been one vote against, but whenever I challenged that psychiatrist, who incidentally was absolutely out of the wall over this, and I said, look, you have to choose between you're going to be a psychiatrist or a priest. There was no answer to that from the DUP.
But you're taking one example of one person who holds
right.
slightly strange views.
I
I mean, Jeffrey had said they voted against gay conversion therapy in the Assembly. What more would you like him to say?
I would like to say, would he vote for gay marriage in the North tomorrow?
Well, as I said earlier, Roger, the DUP has a view on this. We've expressed that view many times. The reality is that same-sex marriage is now law in Northern Ireland as a result of it being passed by Westminster, and I don't envisage there is going to be a vote in the Northern Ireland Assembly on this.
No, but would you vote for it if there was?
Well, our position remains the same. I said that earlier on the programme.
You say our position, but what about your own? What about your own personal position? Because these are conscience things, aren't they? Okay, a party can have a line on it, but individuals can maybe have a different line.
Yeah, and the DUP's policy in this has been clear that we believe in traditional marriage. But look, I do not set out to judge anyone. I do not set out, and it is not my role as a politician to tell people how they, what their lifestyle should be. And in fact, I recognise, Roger, that in times past, people have said things that have been hurtful to members of the LGBT community, and I have made clear that that is something that shouldn't have happened, and that we should not be passing those kind of comments, because in the end, we have a society that is diverse, that is different. And all I'm saying, Roger, is that I think if that we should have respect for all viewpoints, and that where people have a viewpoint that is based on their faith, and that's not unique, Roger, to Presbyterians like me. There are many from a Catholic tradition in Ireland, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, who hold very socially conservative views. So the idea, Roger, that the DUP is alone in holding socially conservative views, I really don't. I think you need to get out a bit more, Roger, in Donegal, and you'll meet a few more people who think in a socially conservative way.
Listen, we could go on for a lot longer, but we're slightly over our time. Jeffrey, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Really enjoyed it and hope we can have you back soon. Thank you very much for coming on LBC.